So we've talked quite a bit about act utilitarianism and Jeremy Bentham's calculus in order for us to determine if each action promotes utility or not. Then we introduced John Stuart Mill's adaptation to rule utilitarianism, where he says we are to act according to the rule whose adoption will produce the most good. And this becomes the general rule. But the point of rule utilitarianism is where it's not a deontological type of an ethical system. It does not require you in all circumstances to follow that rule. There are times that you can break that rule. We're going to be talking today really briefly about how you know when it's okay for you to break the rule in order to promote utility. Unlike Jeremy Bentham, where you look at every single action and you ask the question, is this action promoting utility? And then you do like the calculus thing. Here we look at general rules that promote utility, and we're asking ourselves the question, when can you break those rules? Now, we've already talked about this in some detail, and I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail here, but we can look at things that are generally good things, right? Like lying. Would everyone running around lying, would that promote utility, or would that decrease utility? Someone can just tell me.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, it's going to decrease utility. So we know that lying is a good rule, right? Do not lie. We know that paying taxes, if I felt like cheating on my taxes and I said that, well, it provides me, utility, that doesn't, imagine if everyone was cheating on their taxes, would that be good? The answer, of course, is no, so on and so forth. You can go right on down the line from things that are very broad, like telling the truth and killing, to things that are more specific, like, should I obey traffic lights? Well, yeah, I mean, imagine if you just felt like breaking all the traffic laws and going through red lights. Well, is that universifiable? No, there'd be all sorts of crazy traffic collisions all over the place. And so this is fairly obvious, I think, at this point, but I'm going to restate it here. In order for utilitarianism to be valid, and really any of the serious ethical systems to be valid, when I mean serious, I mean minus relativism and egoism. I'm talking like the really serious, logical, strong, robust ethical systems. It has to be basically universally applied, meaning it doesn't just apply to you and not to me, but it applies to all of us, and it applies to all of us in the same sort of manner, morally speaking. And so how do we know when we can break the rule, when we can violate one of the rules that have been basically established to promote a generally utilitarian society? Well, when you modify a rule, you must be able to universalize it. And so what that means is you need to be able to universalize it in the same circumstances, and that's the key. And so let's use an example of what would not work, because when you try to universalize it, it's not universifiable. And maybe you have already experienced this and you've been tempted. Your parents have a rule, you're supposed to be home at 10 o'clock p.m. And they were tired one night and they fell asleep long before 10, and you got home at not too late, 10:45. And your parents are both asleep and they're not going to know the difference. In the morning, they ask you what time you got home, and you know you're going to get in a bit of trouble, and your parents will be disappointed if they hear that you got home 45 minutes late. They ask you, what should you do? Well, an act utilitarian might look in that moment and say, well, my parents aren't going to be the wiser if I lie. They'll be happier with me if I do lie, and I'll certainly have a lot better time of it if I lie as well. And so in this one circumstance, I might as well go ahead and lie. The real utilitarian would say, well, can you universalize this? Would you want anybody in that circumstance to lie? Well, what this is going to do, you will notice broadly, is it will help to, this lie, sure, you might get away with it this time and you might get away with it next time, but at some point, even if this is universalized, students will get caught, or children will get caught by their parents, and it will lead to a greater amount of distrust between parent and child. And so you see, it's not really universifiable. And so in that circumstance, you know, I really shouldn't lie because I can't universalize this. I wouldn't want my kids to lie to me in this circumstance when I have them. And I don't want every other kid in the world to lie to their parents in a circumstance like this. So I know that I can't break the rule. How many of you see that? Does that make sense to you? Let me see your hands. You say, yes, I understand what you're saying. That makes sense. Okay, so once again, this is the universalizing rule. On the other hand, you've got Jewish people hiding in your basement, and the Nazi knocks on your door and asks if you know where your Jewish neighbors have. You have to know where they are if you've seen them lately. Well, it just so happens you've seen them earlier in the day as you were giving them food. What should you do? Well, you could say, would I want, universally speaking, everyone to lie to the authorities in order to save their neighbors' lives? Well, yes, I would, actually. So in that case, then I can go ahead and lie. Does that make sense? And so the method by which one lives under rule utilitarianism is a bit different than under act utilitarianism. Under rule utilitarianism, you kind of have the rules to follow. And if you don't know what's going to produce more utility, then you just generally follow the rule. So you have moral guidance even in those tricky spots. It's only when it becomes very clear that you would universalize the breaking of a rule that you go ahead and do so. Under act utilitarianism, you have to look at each and every instance. Will this act promote utility? And like I said, with those some of those very close calls, you really have very little guidance. Same thing would be true with killing, breaking promises, so on and so forth. And so here's my question for you. Is there really any difference between rule utilitarianism and true Christian ethics, right? We say we're not supposed to lie as Christians, but then again, are there times when it's good to lie? How many of you say the Christian thing to do is to lie to the Nazis to save the Jewish people? Let me see your hands. The right thing to do is to lie, right? Okay, how many of you would say no, it's not right to lie? Anyone? Okay. Okay, how about this? How many of you would say that in war, provided, of course, you're fighting on the side that's for utility, how many of you would say that it's right to go ahead and break the general rule of not killing and to kill your enemy? Let me see your hands. It's right to kill your enemy, right? Even as a Christian, it's right to kill your enemy. Jesus said, turn the other cheek unless, you know, you got to shoot him. Didn't he say that? Oh, maybe not. I don't know. Okay, so anyway, normally we'd have a fairly long discussion over this, but we're not really in class to have the discussion, and class is in fact out. And so once again, that's a very brief discussion as to how you can know when to break the rule for rule utilitarians. Are there any questions before I let you guys all go? Okay, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully it has been for you as well. After all, we are talking about utilitarianism and it is all about pleasure. So there's that. All right, guys, that didn't even cause any of you to crack a smile. So it's definitely time to go. All right, we'll see you guys
smiled,
later.
But my hand was over my mouth. So.
All right, so one person cracked a smile. Other than that, the rest of you just look like you wanted to die. We'll see you on Wednesday.
I have a question.
Yeah.
One second.
If you would like to take the quiz right now, you can. I can't hear you. You accidentally muted yourself.
I don't know how that did that, but I didn't even touch it.
That's
I don't remember the other one that well. I remember bits and pieces of it. So I'm gonna have to can I like try doing that one like after school today? And I can just do today's like now. Is that possible?
Yeah, you could do today's now.
Okay.
And you can go back and look at the other one. So actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click out of this the Google or Zoom right now, and then I want you to rejoin me in like 5 seconds from now. So I'm going to close it off and restart it.